Denis and Vera lived in the same neighborhood as children and were best friends. Denis always defended the faith, and all the neighborhood boys knew it. And since Denis was a grown man and could fight like no one else, no one dared bully his girlfriend. The years flew by. Denis and Vera grew up. And one day Denis felt a liking for his girlfriend. He was frightened by this feeling and tried to make sure Vera didn't notice. Of course, Denis understood everything, but his tender attachment to the faith prevented him from treating her that way. And so, in his own mind, he couldn't think of anything better to do than start dating another girl, someone with whom he could treat her exactly as he wanted. His choice fell on Polina Pogudina, who, as everyone knew, already had experience in such matters. So Denis fell in love with Polina, and he thought he'd done a very good thing. But in Vera's eyes, from then on, a deep sadness settled over her, as if she'd suddenly lost everything that made her happy. A year later, Denis was drafted into the army. Polina saw him off at the train station. She cried, as expected, her vow promising to wait, but Denis kept gazing into the crowd of people seeing him off, waiting for Vera to come. Vera never came. 6 months later, she and her mother moved to a large city located near the regional center where they all lived. Vera's mother, Tatiana Mikhailovna, was an elementary school teacher, and in the city, she got a job at a new, large school, while Vera, having dreamed of becoming a pastry chef since childhood, enrolled in culinary college. Their friendship with Denis ended there, and neither of them even tried to maintain it, thinking the other didn't want it. Soon, Vera met Artyom, and the image of Denis somehow faded from her memory. Artyom was 7 years older than Vera, and she looked up to him like some kind of idol, although the boy, as Vera's mother said, was cut from a different cloth, being rude and, to put it mildly, not distinguished by refined manners. Vera this didn't bother her at all. She liked the fact that Artyom was so strong, and everyone seemed to fear him. Even among his friends, Artyom was considered the leader, and his opinion was always authoritative. Tanya Mikhailovna didn't like her daughter's new acquaintance at all. Moreover, she, like many others, was afraid of him. It was unclear what this brazen specimen of modern youth had in mind, or what to expect from him. The guy worked repairing other people's cars in a garage, barely finishing 9th grade. Moreover, Artyom's family was similar. His mother worked as a saleswoman at the market, selling shoes. Artyom had never met his father, and his stepfather, with whom he admittedly had a strained relationship, liked to kick ass. Tatiana Mikhailovna prayed that her daughter would finally see who she was getting involved with and break off the relationship with this untrustworthy young man. So when Vera told her she was going to marry him, Tatiana Mikhailovna nearly lost her mind. "Vera, my dear, come to your senses," her mother tried to reason with the girl. "How are you going to live with this man?" "Mom, Artyom lives just like everyone else. He earns well and will be able to provide for me." "It's not about money, Vera." "Then what is it?" "Just look at him. He's a real jerk." "Mom, Artyom just pretends to be like that, but he's not like that at all. And is it really that bad when a man can stand up for himself? To me, that's a very masculine quality. It's one thing for a man to stand up for himself, but your Artyom, in my opinion, is ready to attack anyone." "Stop it. You're exaggerating, Mom, and besides, I've already made up my mind." "So, you really are planning to marry him?" True horror and pleading merged in Tatiana Mikhailovna's eyes. But Vera, oblivious, stubbornly nodded her head. "Yes, I am." Tatiana Mikhailovna tried to dissuade her daughter from this step many more times, and finally, having exhausted all arguments, she almost resigned herself to the inevitable. But then she had an idea, and she hastened to share it with her daughter. "Vera, if you don't want to listen to me, maybe your Artyom himself will help you figure out what kind of person he is," he said, with a triumphant smile on his lips. The woman said. "I don't understand what you mean," Vera said, wary. Then Tatiana Mikhailovna put some kind of box on the table in front of her. This is a listening device. One of my students stole it from his father, an operative, and brought it to class. Naturally, I confiscated it, and then his father, having beaten his son, persuaded me to keep the recorder, saying that it could be useful in my work. He's a real joker. This is, of course, very interesting, but I still don't understand what Artyom has to do with it. Vera was amazed. And besides, with the help of this thing, you can get to know your boyfriend better by seeing, or rather hearing, him from the side. What, are you suggesting that I follow Artyom? Not exactly follow. We could, for example, plant a recorder in his car. Mom, what nonsense is this? I would never agree to such a thing. Why? Are you afraid to make sure I'm right and your Artyom isn't the right option for you? No, that's not what I'm afraid of. So what? Mom, how come you don't understand? It's unfair. It's unfair to Artyom. You yourself taught me that it's wrong to deceive people, and what you're proposing is a deception. Sometimes situations arise when any means are good, Vera. I can't let you ruin your whole life. Understand? After all, you're the only one I have, and I love you more than anything in the world. Do what I ask, and I swear I won't try to dissuade you from marrying that guy again. I'm sure if Dad were alive, he would support me. That last phrase was one Tatiana Mikhailovna always resorted to when she felt she couldn't cope with raising her daughter. Her late husband seemed invisibly present at such moments, helping her, giving her strength and self-confidence. Tatiana Mikhailovna was widowed early, left alone with 5-year-old Vera. She never even considered remarrying or even having an affair, remaining faithful to her still beloved husband. Vera's father, at least in his wife's opinion, was the smartest, kindest, and simply most worthy man on earth. And Tatiana Mikhailovna wanted a groom with similar qualities for her daughter, and Vera's chosen one was completely the opposite of her father. So Tatiana Mikhailovna wasn't being disingenuous when she said her late husband would have agreed. Vera stared at her mother for a moment, then, sighing heavily, said, "Okay, Mom, I'll do as you want. But keep in mind, this is only to prove to you that Artyom isn't at all what you think he is." The very next day, Vera plucked up her courage and slipped the box her mother had given her under the passenger seat of her fiancé's car. She fervently hoped Artyom wouldn't discover the device, relying only on the fact that he rarely cleaned his car, and it was always full of junk. Everything went well, and a day later, Vera took the recorder back, deciding that this would be plenty of time to prove to her mother how wrong she was about Artyom. Vera decided to listen to the recording herself first, so she could confidently present it to her mother as evidence. Rewinding the recording to the point where she heard someone speaking, Vera began listening intently to the conversation. She recognized the voices of Artyom himself and 2 of his friends. At first, they didn't discuss anything interesting, but Vera still found it extremely unpleasant to hear her fiancé's voice while she was away. He also constantly made crude jokes about various topics. For the first time, Vera felt a certain dislike for her boyfriend, and she even wanted to stop the recording to avoid becoming completely disillusioned with him. But she couldn't stop anymore, because at that moment Oleg, one of Artyom's friends, said, "By the way, about women, I saw your ex Alina the other day. Her belly is just huge. She'll probably give birth soon. Let her do whatever she wants now. I don't care anymore. I have a chick prettier than Alina now." "So," said Vera's fiancé, and his friends loudly began to chant. Alina, by the way, was with her boxer, and when she saw me, she turned white as chalk. Oleg spoke again. "Ha, she remembers my upbringing. That's why she shakes with fear, even at the sight of one of my friends," Artyom said mockingly. "Oh well, let that boxer of hers now raise the child, knowing that it is my father, and not his. Somehow, on the contrary, I find it even cooler from all this. So right? Yeah, right, he was a real sucker. He picked up a woman knowing she was pregnant with another man's child. Artyom's second friend, who was also in the car, chimed in. "By the way, Alesha, where did you see Alina?" Artyom asked. "I'd like to see how she'd react if she saw me." "Yeah, near her house on Spring 5. You know, my aunt lives next door. So I was picking up my mom from her place." "I'm never going anywhere else," Artyom chuckled and added, "I don't want to get stuck in the cops again, especially since I'm getting married soon." Their conversation ended there, and judging by the sounds, the friends got to their destination and left the car. There was nothing else of interest on the recording, but what Vera heard was enough to make her go blind. The way Artyom interacted with his friends was at least somewhat bearable, though Vera wasn't used to such blatant rudeness. In her presence, her fiancé usually restrained himself more or less. Besides, Vera understood that most men behaved in each other's company as if they were trying to outshine everyone else with their eloquence. But Vera, of course, had interpreted Artyom and his friends' conversations perfectly correctly, and nothing good came of it. The implication was that some woman, apparently the one Artyom had been dating before her, was pregnant by Vera's fiancé. Vera had absolutely no idea what to do. She'd decided not to tell her mother about it for now. She even had to lie, saying she hadn't yet managed to retrieve the listening device from Artyom's car. Vera's first thought was to question Artyom himself, but she immediately dismissed the idea. What would she tell him, and how would she explain how she knew about his ex-girlfriend and that she was carrying Artyom's child? Then another plan formed in Vera's mind, one that would try to figure out what kind of person her fiancé really was. She could go to the address Artyom's friend Oleg had given her, hoping to meet that very Alina. Of course, the probability of this was too small, but as far as Vera knew, Vesenaya Street consisted of only low-rise buildings' houses, and it's quite possible that there weren't that many women in the final stages of pregnancy in house number 5. Having come up with nothing better, Vera followed her plan. Arriving at the scene, she decided to ask about Alina among the 3 old ladies sitting, clearly bored, on a bench in front of one of the entrances. "What do you need her for?" One of the old ladies became wary as soon as she heard her question. Vera quickly began to come up with a reason why she needed Alina. But at that moment, the door leading to the entrance opened, and a young pregnant woman emerged from the house. "I'm going to the pharmacy, Granny," she muttered as she walked. "Alina, wait," called out the same old lady who had just asked Vera the question. "Is there a girl here interested in you?" "Me." Alina turned and looked at Vera in surprise. Vera's cheeks immediately lit up. She somehow didn't think about what she would say to her fiancé's ex-girlfriend if she was lucky enough to meet her. "Yes, hi, can I talk to you?" Vera stammered. "About what?" Alina asked, frowning. Vera glanced sideways at the old women who it was as if they had turned into one big ear and were barely even breathing. On a personal topic, Vera answered evasively and blushed even more. It seemed that noticing her embarrassment, Alina took pity on her and suggested, "Let's talk on the road." When they had walked some distance, Vera, having gathered her courage, asked, "You were acquainted with Artyom Zaitsev before, right?" Hearing her question, Alina stopped. Her gaze went from curious to icy. "What do you want from me?" she hissed through clenched teeth. "Nothing, really? You see, how can I explain this? I'm Artyom's fiancé, and I completely by chance found out about you and that. In general, I found out that you were carrying his child." "He told you that?" Alina asked, frowning. Vera shook her head. "No, he doesn't even know that I went to see you. You see, Artyom and I are planning to get married, but when I found out he was hiding something from me, and this whole situation, I don't know, but for some reason I started having doubts about the wisdom of my decision to marry him." Vera looked down, unsure how do I want to explain to Alina exactly what she's feeling now and what I expect to hear from her. It's very good that you're having doubts, Alina said passionately, involuntarily looking around. Then she fixed her gaze on Vera and said impressively, "Run away from him, you fool. Before it's too late. Run." "What? But why?" Vera exclaimed in despair. "I wish you never knew the answer to that question. And you shouldn't have come here. I won't discuss anything with you." Alina turned to leave. "Wait," Vera called after her and asked cautiously, "Please, just tell me what I should be afraid of?" "Himself," the young woman replied curtly and walked away. Vera watched her for a long time, pondering her words. Only now did she realize that her mother had indeed been right, and before agreeing to tie the knot with Artyom, she should have gotten to know him much better. That same evening, when she met Artyom, Vera decided to talk to him about postponing the wedding. "You see, I thought it would have been much better if I had finished my studies first." "I don't have much time left to study," she said, not looking her boyfriend in the eye. "Vera, I told you, money is no problem for me. Study to your heart's content. I'll provide you with everything you need." "That's not the point. It's just that, you see, I have exams soon, and it will be difficult for me to combine family life with my studies. And why should we rush?" Vera offered another argument. "Or maybe you have doubts about me?" Artyom responded instantly. Vera looked at him with fear and shook her head. "No, otherwise I was already thinking of helping you and removing all your doubts." Artyom's smile broke out, not taking his eyes off his fiancé. "What do you mean?" Vera asked. "You'll get pregnant, and then there's no way out," Artyom said with a completely serious expression. Vera tensed up, and the guy immediately lost his desire. "I was joking, but she got scared for some reason." "True. But if you think we're rushing, let's postpone the wedding for a while. But keep in mind, I can't wait long. I really want to wake up next to you in the morning. If only you'd listened to me, and not your strict teacher mom, we would have rented an apartment and we would start living together right now, regardless of anyone. You know, Artyom, I don't want to upset Mom, and she's against it," Vera replied with a sigh of relief. I know. The guy hugged the girl and pulled her close. "But I'm tired of waiting for you to stop being subordinate to your teacher mommy." Thus Vera gained some reprieve and decided to use this time to get a closer look at Artyom, and at the same time sort out her feelings for him. Today, for the first time, she found his touches unpleasant. Every time, she mentally imagined Alina and couldn't get rid of thoughts about what exactly had happened between her and Artyom. Vera was also terrified of the words her fiancé's ex-girlfriend had said to her at the end. And of course, what bothered her most in this situation was that Artyom so easily gave up the opportunity to raise his own child, and even talked about him and his motherhood. The girl didn't understand what all this was connected with, but just in case, she decided for herself that until she figured everything out, there could be no talk of any wedding. Vera never let her mother listen to the recording, saying it was nothing interesting. But she still delighted Tatiana Mikhailovna with the news that she had decided to hold off on getting married to Artyom for now. Tatiana Mikhailovna breathed a sigh of relief and didn't ask her daughter why she'd made that decision. She guessed that her idea with the listening device had likely worked and was the reason Vera had postponed her marriage. And that was a good thing. Tatiana Mikhailovna also hoped that, with time, her daughter would realize what kind of person Artyom was and stop talking to him altogether. Although Vera tried very hard not to frighten herself by pondering what exactly Alina was trying to warn her about, despite herself, these thoughts crept into Vera's head, and she constantly wondered why exactly she should be wary of Artyom, and why Alina herself shuddered at the mere mention of her ex-boyfriend. Moreover, after meeting Alina and everything that preceded it, Vera began to notice things in Artyom that she simply hadn't noticed before. "I saw it," Vera really disliked all his behavior and mannerisms, sometimes verging on rudeness, and it wasn't clear whether Artyom himself had lost his inhibitions in her presence and, due to circumstances, had begun to reveal his true self, or whether Vera's eyes had finally opened and she realized how wrong she had been about him. Artyom was often so rude in conversation that his statements provoked a protest within Vera, not my own. True, what he said had nothing to do with Vera herself, but was directed at someone or something else. But then one day, the girl had to experience the full force of her fiancé's wrath. Later, reflecting on what had happened, Vera realized that she was partly to blame. For some reason, she decided she could somehow influence her boyfriend and told him directly that she didn't like it when he behaved this way. Artyom was just telling Vera about his mother and how someone stole her day's earnings at the market. "Brainless," Artyom said, referring to his mother. "You lecture her, but it's no use. She's up to this again, the idiot. Now let her deal with it," Artyom said sternly. Vera said, "You can't talk about your mother like that. And anyway, I'm tired of you constantly swearing. Can't you talk normally, without slang?" The guy fell silent and looked at Vera as if she were a fly buzzing next to his face. "Is there something about me that you don't like?" he said, narrowing his eyes. "I like everything except that," Vera frowned, ignoring his now prickly gaze. "Except what? Are you suggesting I become a nerd and communicate like them? I'm simply asking you to be more restrained in your expressions, especially when you talk about your mother." Artyom leaned forward abruptly and grabbed Vera's wrist painfully. "Let me decide for myself what to do and how to behave, and don't you dare tell me what to do. Understand?" he said, looking straight into her eyes. "Artyom, it hurts." Vera tried to free her hand, but the guy only squeezed it even tighter. "I'm asking, do you understand?" "Yes, I understand," Vera whispered. Then he let go of her hand, and the next morning, Vera's wrist was one big bruise. That's when Vera was truly scared for the first time, and began to think about how she could end all relations with Artyom. The girl understood that it wouldn't be so easy, but she still couldn't even imagine what exactly awaited her in the future. For starters, Vera decided to take advantage of the disagreement that had broken out between them and stopped answering Artyom's calls. But this was of no use at all, because on the very first day, Artyom was already waiting for her at the entrance to the college where Vera studied. "What's the matter, dear? Are you upset with me? Are you trying to show off?" "Artyom, I think you and I are too different, and it's unlikely that anything will work out between us." Vera decided to make her position clear right away. "Did your mommy tell you that?" "No, my mom had absolutely nothing to do with it. I think so myself." And Vera didn't finish the sentence, because the guy picked her up in his arms and carried her toward his car. Vera didn't scream or struggle, and everyone nearby was already staring at them. Having seated Vera in the car, Artyom, without saying a word, started the engine and drove off. "Who do you take me for, Vera?" the guy asked after they had driven some distance. Vera remained silent. Then he spoke again. "I'm not someone you can just leave. Women don't leave me. Vera, remember that and try to calm down. Last time it was your own fault. Don't push your luck. And everything will be just fine between us." That's it. That's the end of it. Still waiting for an answer, Artyom stopped the car and kissed Vera. She didn't resist, knowing it would only anger him, but her only thought was how to get out of this. After that day, Vera tried to see Artyom as little as possible, making up all sorts of excuses, but it didn't help. Artyom would pester her near her house and the college entrance, practically watching her every move. And one day, Vera lost it again. "Artyom, I can't do this anymore. You can see that nothing's working out between us," she exclaimed angrily, when Artyom tried to persuade her to go up to his apartment. "What's not working out between us? So far, all I can see is that for some reason, you've suddenly pulled away from me, and I'd like to understand who or what caused it. Or, maybe, you could tell me?" "I already told you. We're too different. And you've only just realized it now? I always thought that was what attracted you to our relationship. Am I wrong?" Artyom looked intently at Vera, and she cringed under his gaze. Now she had nothing to say in response. Indeed, Artyom's rudeness, which had previously repulsed her, somehow appealed to her. She saw a certain strength and masculinity in his demeanor, not his unusual promiscuity and boorishness. More than once, Vera had the urge to tell Artyom what she knew about Alina and his child, who must have already been born by then. She thought she could use Artyom's past relationships and the fact that he hid it all from her as the real reason for their breakup, but Vera was terrified to even broach the subject. She had already realized how quickly Artyom could lose his temper, and who knew how far he would go in a fit of rage. Almost a month passed, during which Vera still hadn't found a way to break up with Artyom, and he continued to consider her his girlfriend and had no intention of giving up. And finally, he started talking about marriage again. "We'll submit the application for now, and then we'll see how the wedding time comes. Your studies, it'll be over soon." Artyom reasoned as if nothing had happened. "No, Artyom, I'm not ready to marry you yet," Vera snapped. "Yes, so what this time? Do you want to find a job first, or is your teacher mommy preventing you from marrying a bad boy? And leave my mom alone and stop calling her a teacher," Vera exclaimed, frightened by her own words. Artyom looked at her with an attentive gaze and said the following: "So, that's it. We'll submit the application tomorrow, and you'll start preparing for the wedding. I don't intend to wait any longer." "So, I've already given in to you. Why do you need this, Artyom? You can see that I don't want to marry you anymore." Don't want to? It seems so. But I do want to. Perhaps even more than before. I like overcoming such obstacles. And you'll thank me 100 times later. Thank me for what? For making me do what I don't want. You simply don't know what you want. You couldn't have fallen out of love with me so quickly. There must be a reason. And either you explain everything to me now, or stop talking about it. We'll get married, and everything will be fine between us. Vera again wanted to name the reason that she knows about his past relationships, and that Artyom has a child. To keep from letting it slip, the girl clenched her fists. "No, Artyom, the only reason is that I finally saw something in you I didn't notice before, and I will not become your wife. Everything between us is in the past. Please accept that." Having finally said these words, Vera tried to get out of the car, where that conversation had taken place. But the door was locked, and the girl looked at the guy sitting next to her in bewilderment. "You, Vera, need constant supervision, otherwise you start doing stupid things." Artyom grinned wickedly. "I already told you, women don't leave me that easily. Choose. Either you become submissive again and do everything as I say," or the guy paused, briefly, "or your teacher mother will suffer." "What are you saying, Artyom?" Vera's eyes reflected all the horror she felt at that moment. "Don't doubt it. I'm ready to do anything for you. If you don't listen to me, your mom won't come home after her second shift. She'll disappear along with her notebooks. I've hated teachers since childhood." "But what? What can I do, since one of them will soon become my relative?" Vera was so shaken that she couldn't speak. Only in despair did she look straight ahead and think about how serious this threat could be. "Darling, don't be upset," Artyom said meanwhile, touching Vera's shoulder. "Understand just one thing. If you stop resisting me, you will be the happiest chick in the world. I will do everything for you. I will get the stars from the sky if you want. But at the same time, you will remain yourself." Vera thought to herself, but did not say anything out loud. Vera did not close her eyes all that night, shaking with fear and not understanding what to do next. The next day brought her two encounters that changed everything. First, Vera, riding on a minibus in the morning, recognized in one of the passengers the old woman with whom she talked near Alina's house. While Vera was thinking whether to go up to her to say hello, the old woman was already heading for the exit. Then Vera, without knowing why, jumped out of the bus after her. "Wait," Vera shouted, catching up with the old woman. "You are Alina's grandmother, aren't you?" "That's right. We saw each other near your at-home." "Oh yes, I recognized you," the woman answered. Vera took a breath, collecting her thoughts. "Can I ask you something?" She began. "Go ahead, ask enthusiastically," the old woman nodded. "You see, I dated Alina's ex-boyfriend for a while. I was even going to marry him," Vera began. "With Artyom." The old woman's eyes widened. "Yes, with him." "Oh my God. And now what? And now I don't know how to get rid of him. He threatens me and doesn't want to let me go." Vera almost cried as she said this. She was truly desperate and didn't know where to turn for help. "Oh my God," the old woman shook her head. "How did you even manage to get involved with him? Although, why am I asking? Our Linka also dated him for over a year and didn't want to listen to anyone until all his mother and I's fears were confirmed. Will you tell me what happened between them?" It's clear what happened. When this brat started bullying Alinka, she immediately realized what kind of a jerk he was. She wanted to break up with him, but he wouldn't have it. He wouldn't leave her alone. He walked around like he was tied to something, just like you're saying now. And he threatened her too. Alina was even afraid of us. Tell her about it. And then she met her Roma. He's a boxer, a master of sports. The woman smiled at her words. Then her face became sad and focused again, and she continued talking. When this Artyom found out that my granddaughter had found someone else, he seemed to resign himself at first. But then he lured Alina to his home with cunning. But then he did something mean. He said he gave her another gift, as if he were giving her a farewell present. Alina didn't tell anyone again. Apparently, he really scared her. Only when she found out about the child and that she got pregnant after that incident, then she confessed. She broke off relations with Roma, but he found out anyway and wanted to kill Artyom. My granddaughter was afraid of this. That's why she kept quiet. Roma could have been jailed if something happened, and he would definitely have been kicked out of sports. She understood this and was more afraid for him than for herself. And then Artyom somehow found out about her pregnancy and that Alina was having his baby. My friend Alina, I think, let it slip to someone. I happened to be nearby then, and I felt like it was time to go to the store. I went out into the yard. This guy was pestering my granddaughter again. But I called the police. She also said that this hooligan had been hanging around our house for a long time and allegedly kept an eye on people playing on the playground. That was the only thing that came to mind, to somehow annoy Artyom. I don't know if I succeeded, but he never showed up near Alina again. So it worked. And Alina and Roma are together now. Roma said that he would consider her child his own, so, fortunately, everything is over. Well, what are you planning to do? Vera's grandmother asked. I don't know. The girl whispered, stunned by everything she had heard. Maybe you should go to the police? The older woman suggested enthusiastically. Tell them how he threatened you and all that. That scumbag belongs behind bars. It's a shame our Alina didn't report him then. She's still afraid of him like fire. And if it weren't for my granddaughter, I would have sent him to prison myself. After all, how many more girls could suffer from him? As luck would have it, Artyom was blessed with good looks. So girls flocked to him like flies. You know why. Vera listened for a while longer as Grandma Alina scolded Artyom, and then the older woman said goodbye, citing some business. Before leaving, She wished Vera a speedy end to her relationship with the man she'd recently been planning to marry. Vera nodded resignedly in response and thanked the old woman for being so open with her. Watching Alina's grandmother leave, Vera headed along the pavement. But before she'd taken more than a few steps, a car horn blared nearby. Vera shuddered as she saw the familiar car and Artyom, smiling behind the wheel. Without waiting for her reaction, the man jumped out and grabbed Vera by the elbow. "I'm glad, though. It'll only make things worse for you," Artyom whispered, moving closer to her. Unexpectedly, Vera decided to change her tack and looked at him questioningly. "Why should I yell? We're supposed to be a couple, after all." "That's right. Only you seem to have forgotten that lately." "Get in the car, we need to talk," the guy said, no longer smiling. Vera only hesitated for a few seconds before obediently following the car parked at the side of the road. Of course, she could have actually screamed and attracted someone's attention, but what would that have changed? It would only have angered Artyom even more, and then he might well have put his threats against her mother into action. As soon as they were alone in his car, Artyom turned to Vera and asked her, "Why didn't you say anything and refuse to tell me the reason why you started distancing yourself from me?" Vera looked at him in bewilderment, and then Artyom continued. "You yourself said that the most important thing in a relationship is trust. And what's going on? You're seeing my ex-girlfriend's relatives behind my back. By the way, I found out about her somehow." Completely by accident, Vera stammered, looking away. "Okay, you don't want to tell me and you don't have to. I already know that Alina or that old woman, her grandmother, could have told you about me, and you therefore believed them, and you didn't even think to discuss everything with me. Oh, Vera, and you still say that we're a couple. Okay. Let's go." "Where to?" Vera asked fearfully. Artyom didn't answer her. He pulled out onto the highway and sped off, overtaking other cars. Vera silently prayed, thinking of only one thing. What could she do now? What could he just let her go today? Then she did as he'd advised. Alina's grandmother would go to the police and tell them everything. Even if they didn't listen to her, she would never be alone with Artyom again. Just let something happen right now to get her away from him. Just as Vera was thinking this, there was a terrible grinding sound, and she hit her head painfully on the dashboard. She didn't immediately understand what had happened, but when she turned and looked at Artyom, she saw blood streaming down his face. After that, Vera lost consciousness and only woke up in the hospital. When she opened her eyes, she felt as if she were sleeping and dreaming. Right in front of her was the face of her childhood friend, Denis. Such dreams often visited Vera. In these dreams, she and Denis were once again the closest people in the world, and it made the world seem so simple and beautiful. Vera always didn't want to wake up when she dreamed of Denis. After all, in those dreams, Denis was the same as before, not the one who, having trampled her feelings for him, chose another. In fact, Vera didn't blame Denis for that. Now, she didn't blame him anymore. Their childhood friendship didn't mean Denis had to feel the same way about her. Friendship and love are two different things, which is why Vera stopped seeing him or even communicating with him. She couldn't consider him just a friend. And her friendship, as it turned out, was no longer so necessary to Denis, who was no longer a child, since he himself had never made a single attempt to contact her. Seeing Vera open her eyes, Denis rushed to her and whispered, "Vera, Vera, how are you feeling?" "My head hurts a little," Vera replied, confused, beginning to realize that this was all really happening. "That's understandable. You have a slight concussion, I'm told, but otherwise everything seems fine." "You gave me such a fright, Vera." Denis pressed his forehead to her shoulder and sighed with relief. Someone's voices were heard in the hallway, and the guy jumped to his feet. "Sorry, Vera. I can't be here. I work part-time as an orderly here. And not in this department, but in another one. I saw you in the emergency room and nearly lost my mind when I found out you were brought in after a car accident. Okay, Verka. Bye. I'll try to come see you again in a couple of hours. Get well soon, do you hear? Get well soon. Denis gave her a stern look, just like he'd given her as a child, when he'd tried to lecture her on something, and then disappeared through the door. Vera, watching him go, burst into tears. Oh, how she'd miss Denis. If he were here, she'd have nothing to fear. Not for herself, not for her mother, not for anything. That's how it had been before. And now Vera would give anything to feel that safe again. Later, she learned what had happened that day. Artyom had crashed head-on into the truck in front of him. He himself, with a traumatic brain injury and a broken collarbone, was taken to another hospital. Vera, however, wasn't hurt as badly, and after just a couple of days, she was discharged and sent home. During the time Vera spent in the hospital, Denis visited her several times a day to check on her and find out how she was feeling. However, he didn't stay with her for very long, citing the fact that Vera shouldn't overexert herself. Vera was so happy to see Denis that she was terribly reluctant to be discharged from the hospital. She felt as if as soon as she left when Vera went home, Denis would disappear from her life again. And there, outside the windows of the medical facility, the same problems and fear of Artyom awaited her again. However, the very next day after Vera went home, Denis himself came to visit her. Her mother, who had always treated Denis well, was also overjoyed to see him. The woman, remembering how much her daughter's friend adored her cottage cheese pancakes, baked a mountain of them and then went off somewhere, giving the young couple some privacy. Vera's mother hadn't slept for 2 nights in a row before this, and now she felt an enormous relief. As if Denis's arrival meant she could worry less about Vera. Upon learning that her daughter had been in an accident and that her Artyom was driving, Tatiana Mikhailovna felt in her gut that it had happened for a reason. Vera and Artyom had probably had a fight before, which was why Artyom was driving so fast. Walking along the park paths, Tatiana Mikhailovna, for the first time in a long time, simply enjoyed the sudden calm, and even smiled occasionally, remembering Vera and Denis's childhood pity. Alone in the apartment, Vera and Denis were initially a little shy around each other, but within half an hour their former affection had taken over, and they were eagerly sharing stories of their time apart. Vera was simply afraid to talk about her relationship with Artyom and didn't say a word about him at all. Denis, however, tried not to show how hard these years apart from Vera had been, how often he scolded himself for his cowardice, not having the courage to admit to Vera that his feelings for her had changed and that their friendship had blossomed into love. His own actions, and the fact that he had traded Vera for the foolish and fickle Polina for a fleeting thrill, seemed to him later the height of madness, but there was no going back. Yes, Denis had figured, since Vera had severed all ties with him, she no longer needed him. Not him, not his friendship, and especially not his love. Vera had become even more beautiful in the time they hadn't seen each other, and Denis was very surprised to learn that she was still single. They talked until the middle of the night. Tatiana Mikhailovna, Vera's mother, had returned home long ago, and now she slept peacefully in her room, from where her steady snores could sometimes be heard. Denis and Vera sat in the semi-darkness, mostly reminiscing about their childhoods. They both studiously avoided discussing why their friendship had ended so abruptly. Neither of them wanted to think about what would happen next. It was as if they only had this day and this night to be happy again, being next to each other. Vera learned from Denis that he had moved here, to this city, quite recently. He had decided to open his own business here, working with metal and manufacturing some kind of steel tanks for heating systems. Vera didn't really understand it, but Denis said he had acquired all the necessary skills in the army, which he later developed independently, becoming both a welder and a mechanic. What about your work at the hospital? Vera asked him in surprise. There aren't many orders for my products or services yet, so to have a safety net, I have to work part-time. Denis explained with a smile. Of course, choosing a city where he could develop his business wasn't a priority for him. Random, Denis knew his Vera lived somewhere around here, and the thought of her being nearby warmed his heart. But he hadn't planned to look for her specifically, assuming she had her own life, and wasn't sure his sudden appearance would please Vera. But circumstances had worked out this way, and not otherwise. And now Denis was over the moon at the sight of Vera's smiling face and sparkling eyes. While Denis was nearby, Vera seemed to have forgotten where she was, and only after seeing him to the door, with dawn already breaking through the windows, did she again remember Artyom and all her problems. Vera understood perfectly well that if not for the accident, that day would not have ended well for her. She saw it in Artyom's eyes. Just thinking about it made her knees tremble. Vera scolded herself for not listening to her mother initially, and for her relationship with Artyom going so far, but she was still glad in her heart that she had agreed to plant a listening device in her prospective fiancé's car, and thus did not do even more stupid things by going out marry Artyom. The girl now couldn't understand how she could have wanted to marry Artyom and what had attracted her so much to him. She probably saw him as someone who could become as protective and supportive as Denis had once been. But Artyom and Denis were absolute opposites. After all, one had a kind heart, capable of protecting someone, while the other had only his own ambitions, disregarding everyone and everything. Vera decided to try to explain herself to Artyom again, but this time in a place where he couldn't do anything to her. She went to see him in the hospital, and on the way, she kept trying to think through her conversation with him. Well, finally, Artyom exclaimed when he saw Vera. I already thought my girlfriend thought I was dead and would never come to visit me. The young man chuckled at his own words. There were 2 other men in the room, but they were busy playing backgammon and seemed oblivious to everything around them. Then, Vera resolutely began the conversation. Artyom, I've come to talk to you again about our relationship. Please, don't stalk me anymore. I've already tried to explain to you that everything between us is in the past, she began, but the guy abruptly interrupted her. Do you really want to leave me when I'm in the hospital in this state? That's a completely inhuman faith. Don't you think so? Unfortunately, the hospital is the only place where we can talk calmly. Please listen to me. I want to tell you that if you don't stop stalking me, I will call the police. I'm not joking, Artyom, and I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Have you said everything? Artyom looked at Vera, narrowing his eyes. Now listen to me. Everything between us will end only when I say so, and no police will help you get rid of me. Remember these words. But why? Why do you need this yourself? The girl cried out in despair. Artyom, don't you understand that I don't love you anymore, but rather, on the contrary, I'm starting to hate you? Your feelings don't interest me. What I feel for you is enough. And besides, faith is a matter of principle. I can't allow everyone to make fun of me, especially for a second time. I think you know what I'm talking about. Vera stared at Artyom, trying to think of any more arguments. I met another guy, she blurted out before she could think about it. Artyom's face turned purple. Repeat what you just said, he muttered through clenched teeth. Vera had absolutely no time to think about her answer. Besides, some instinct kicked in. After all, in her childhood, whenever she was scared, she knew Denis would come to her aid, and now Vera was really scared, so scared that it was as if she couldn't even think about the consequences. Yes, I'm dating someone else now. He's my childhood friend, and we've loved each other for a long time. It's just that circumstances have led to us breaking up for a while. So, Artyom, please stop stalking me. Otherwise, What else? The guy said in a metallic voice. This could end badly for everyone, Vera whispered back, her lips white with fear. Returning home that day, Vera cried for a long time, locking herself in her room. Then she called Denis and said to him, "You know, I haven't told you, but I have a boyfriend I'm going to marry, and you see, he's jealous of me with everyone. And I foolishly told him a lot about you before. So he's upset that I'm talking to a childhood friend with whom I have so many memories. Don't be offended, Denis, but it's better for us not to see each other anymore. Will you be able to forgive me for this?" Denis didn't answer right away. For a while there was only cold silence, and then he said, "It's okay, Vera. I understand everything. Don't worry. I was very happy to see you." After hanging up, Vera burst into tears even more. That day, it seemed to her that she was even ready to submit to Artyom's will, just so she wouldn't have to confront him alone anymore. Especially since she no longer had the strength to do so. What happened next seemed like a dream to Vera. The very next day, when she was returning home from school, Artyom's friends were waiting for her at the entrance to her building. There were several of them. A man. Surrounding Vera, the young men began making jokes at her expense, then tried to force her into a car parked nearby. Vera didn't even have time to consider how Denis had ended up next to them. Literally seconds later, a fight broke out between him and the other guys, and Vera found herself right in the middle. Instead of running and hiding, she rushed to her childhood friend's defense. The fear that had gripped her until then vanished, and Vera's only thought was that Denis couldn't handle them all alone. Although Denis had also taken a beating in the fight, despite the numerical superiority, he quickly scattered the thugs who had attacked Vera. Then, Vera's neighbor from upstairs emerged from the building. He had a dog on a leash, and the dog immediately bared its teeth and growled, ready to pounce. The man, having assessed the situation, threatened to call the police. Then, seeing all this, Artyom's friends didn't wait for more trouble to arise. They quickly jumped into their car and drove away. As their car disappeared around the corner, Vera began to shake from the stress she had experienced. Oblivious to it pay attention, she was afraid to look up at Denis. She had no explanation for everything that had happened, and nothing came to mind. Meanwhile, Denis was thanking the dog walker who had arrived in time to help, and then, carefully touching Vera's shoulder, he said in an unexpectedly cheerful tone, "Will you provide first aid to a wounded hero?" While Vera, continuing to hide her eyes, treated Denis's wounds at home, he looked intently at her, and finally asked, "Will you tell me who they were and what they wanted from you?" Vera shook her head. "I can't tell you." "Why not?" The girl didn't answer, and then Denis asked another question. "And will you tell me about your so-called fiancé? Who is he? What does he do? Why is your mother afraid for you?" "What?" Vera perked up and finally looked up, looking at Denis. "Yes, Vera. Tatiana Mikhailovna called me and asked for help." "What kind of help?" "That's what I'd like to know. From what you say, everything is great with your fiancé, but you've postponed the wedding or even changed your mind about marrying him. So how are you going to tell me what's going on with you? You know I won't leave you alone until I get to the bottom of this." "Denis," Vera looked at him pleadingly. "Please, don't interfere in all this." "Why is that?" Because tears started falling from Vera's eyes. "He might hurt you somehow," she whispered. "Who is he?" Denis asked sternly. "Artyom or his friends?" "For example, especially after they saw you today. Us together." "That's exactly what I was afraid of." "Verka," Denis said in a gentle voice. "Let's go back to the beginning, and you will explain everything to me about your Artyom. Okay? And then we'll decide together what to do next. Remember how we were when we were kids? You never hid anything from me. I was stupid when I was kids, and didn't think that you could suffer because of me." Vera turned away, and then Denise said sternly, "Listen, stop it. Just because you're afraid of this Artyom doesn't mean I'm afraid of him. And if he's keeping you in fear, I don't know with what, then that means he's weak and only brave with women, just like his friends. Maybe so, but I don't want to test it by setting you up. I've already done something stupid by saying we were dating." "Ah, so that's it. So you were trying to save my skin when you asked us not to see each other again. Vera, I'm waiting. Tell me already." Vera had no more strength to resist. And, gradually, drawing information out of her, Denis learned everything he wanted. Denis tried to remain calm. Only the vein in his neck trembled slightly, and, unnoticed by Vera, he clenched and unclenched his fists. What happened next and how Denis, just like he had during their childhood, instantly solved all her problems, Vera didn't know. Only she never saw Artyom again, with the exception of one single occasion, but more on that later. At first, Vera was terribly afraid, most of all for Denis himself. And she, worried that Artyom would carry out his threats against her mother, literally monitored her mother's every move, sought out every opportunity to meet her when she worked the second shift, and constantly called her, asking how she was doing. Then, worry gave way to bewilderment. Vera realized that Artyom had probably already been discharged from the hospital after more than months passed, but he still hadn't shown up or even called her. When Vera decided to share her thoughts on the matter with Denis, he simply told her, "You can forget about him. Consider him never in your life. That's all." Vera couldn't believe her ears, but Denis refused to explain anything. Some time passed before she could allow herself not to be afraid and not look over her shoulder every time she walked down the street. Then, a feeling not just of gratitude for Denis settled in Vera's soul, but something so immense that it was impossible to describe in words. Every time she saw him, her chest tightened with a piercing tenderness for him. Vera understood that part of these feelings were caused by the fact that somewhere deep down, she continued to love him just as much as before. But Vera forbade herself even to think about it. There was no hint from Denis that their relationship was anything other than a continuation of the same friendship they had had in earlier times, and so Vera diligently controlled herself and all her feelings. But she had to do this with each of their new the meeting was becoming more and more difficult. And then, Vera saw Denis with a girl. Their meeting happened completely by chance. Vera was wandering around the mall looking for a gift for her mother. Her birthday was approaching, and Vera still hadn't decided what to get her. True, her mother never tired of repeating that the best gift she could have ever given up on marrying Artyom was that her daughter had given up on marrying Artyom. Vera stood near the jewelry display case, wondering if her mother would like topaz earrings, modest ones she could afford. A loud laugh rang out somewhere nearby, and Vera turned around. Denise and the girl were walking down the aisle, talking, oblivious to everyone around them. Denise's companion was very beautiful and young, much younger than Vera herself. Vera watched them head for the exit, and just before the glass doors, Denis put his arm around the girl's shoulders. Vera didn't understand what was happening to her. A searing jealousy flooded her consciousness, and she felt as if she'd returned to the past. There she was, standing at the train station, watching Polinka cling to Denise's neck. She couldn't find the strength to approach them then. She couldn't stand standing there and watching Denis hug another woman. Vera was experiencing something similar now, and it would always be like this, her whole life, unless she stopped seeing him. Denis would eventually marry someone else, and Vera wouldn't be able to stand being around his wife either. And it was all wrong, even unfair to Denis himself. After all, he doesn't know that his childhood friend, whom he treats more like a sister, dreams of him kissing her just once. Finally realizing that this couldn't go on, and that it would only get worse, Vera decided to cut off all contact with Denis. She began ignoring his calls and, citing other matters, refused to see him. After 3 weeks, Denis couldn't take it anymore and demanded an explanation. Vera wanted to avoid this, as she couldn't think of anything to say to him. Why doesn't she want to continue their friendship? "What's wrong, Vera?" Denis asked one day, visiting them unannounced. "Nothing happened. Why are you asking?" Vera tried to wriggle out of it. "Then explain why you're hiding from me? Did Artyom really show up again?" Vera shook her head. No, I haven't seen him since. What else? Or did you meet someone and don't want us to be seen together again?" Denise looked intently into her eyes. "No, I haven't met anyone," the girl answered sadly. "So what then?" Her gaze reflected despair. Then she said, "Why are you tormenting me with these questions, Denis? You and I have grown up and can no longer be friends." "I can't." Vera covered her face with her hands. "Forgive me, please. I'm ashamed to admit it. But I don't feel friendly or brotherly love for you. I used to think it was just a childish crush and that it would pass. But then, you came back into my life, and everything came back again. I can't see you with other girls, because I love you. Are you happy? Do you understand that?" Vera trembled, and her voice broke. Then Denis walked up to her and hugged her. "Say it again," he whispered, inhaling the scent of her hair. "What can I say?" Vera was surprised, sniffling that "you love me? You can't imagine what that means to me." Denis held Vera's face in his hands and looked at her for a long moment, unable to believe what he had just heard. Then he kissed her, and the world seemed to flare inside them both. It seemed like an eternity had passed, so Vera couldn't tell if this was happening to Ava or a dream. But then a thought flashed through her mind, and Vera slowly pulled away from Denis. Her cheeks were flushed, and her legs wobbled, and I really didn't want it all to end. But Vera still asked, "What about that girl I saw you with at the mall?" "What a girl." Denis was surprised, so young and very beautiful. "Suka, have you seen me with Susha?" "I don't know her name." "Well, how can you not know? After all, this is Susha, my cousin." Vera looked at Denis in bewilderment. "But she's so little. She's already 17, although I don't argue. She looks all of 20. She entered one of the local institutes. We can meet up sometime and sit together. Vera, I still can't believe that my secret desires are coming true. But, believe me, I've never loved anyone but you. Apparently, our friendship played a cruel joke on us, preventing us from confessing our true feelings. But now I will never let you go, Verka. Now, you will forever be only mine." 2 years later, Denis and Vera became husband and wife. By then, Vera had already received both a diploma and a good job at a prestigious family restaurant. Denis's business was also taking off, and together, he and Vera decided that they were now ready to start a family. A year later, they had a son, Misha. And then, 4 years later, a second son, whom they named Ivan. It was then that Vera met her ex-fiancé, Artyom. That day was very joyful for their family. Vera and her husband arrived at the church to baptize their young son near the entrance, when Vera, holding her eldest son's hand, stopped to give alms to the poor people standing near the gate. To her horror, she recognized Artyom in one of them. His face, which had only recently been young and handsome, now looked haggard. Even just a few steps away, the lingering smell of alcohol wafted through the air. So much so that Vera began to feel sick. "Give it to me, mother," Artyom said without looking at her. Vera dropped 100-ruble note into the plastic cup in front of him and hurried away. On a human level, she felt sorry for the young man, who had apparently hit rock bottom, and she couldn't understand how this could have happened to him. Having caught up with her husband, who was solemnly holding little Vanya in his arms, Vera quietly touched his hand. "What's wrong? You seem to have turned pale?" Denis asked, looking at her with concern. Nothing. I just love you very much, Denis." Tears of joy welled up in Vera's eyes as she looked alternately at her husband and then at the children. And then Denis leaned towards her and said in a half-whisper, "Tell me about it again this evening."